Rain clung to the glass doors of St. Michael's emergency department in a thin, shimmering film. Each time they slid open, the night rushed in with the smell of wet asphalt and exhaust swallowed by disinfectant and fluorescent light. Incoming trauma, male, military, multiple gunshot wounds. The charged nurse's voice crackled overhead. A heartbeat later, the doors banged wide. 2 paramedics barreled in with a gurney wheel shrieking against the tile. The man on the stretcher looked more like wreckage than a patient. Tactical shirt shredded, right shoulder soaked in blood, his left flank wrapped in dressings already turning dark. Muscles in his jaw locked so tight a vein jumped at his temple. Staff Sergeant Cole Mercer, 33-1 paramedic shouted. Ambushed outside city limits, vitals unstable, 2 GSWs to the flank, 1 deep laceration shoulder. He fought us the whole ride. Cole's eyes were open, too open, pupils blown roaming. He did not see the ER. He saw something else past the ceiling, past the lights. Mercer, you're at St. Michael's Medical Center, the paramedic said. You're safe. You hear me, Sergeant? Cole's fingers clawed at the side rail. He smelled antiseptic, heard the monitor beeping, felt pressure on his chest. In his brain it twisted into rotor wash and dust, the whine of incoming rounds. Do not touch me, he rasped. The gurney slammed to a stop in Trauma Bay 2. Curtains snapped shut. Bright light flooded his face. Hands came at him from every direction. Gloves squeaked. Metal clinked. Blood pressure, a resident called. 80/40 and falling. Get 2 large bore IVs type and cross O negative hanging. Now, Dr. David Alvarez snapped. Mercer. I am Dr. Alvarez. We are going to help you. Stay still. Cole's heart hammered. A gloved hand pressed on his shoulder. Another tried to lift his shirt. Night slammed down in his head. The overhead glare became the flash of muzzle fire. The squeal of the gurney turned into the whine of a drone. Someone shouted, their voice blurring with another from months ago in his earpiece. Contact left, break, break, break. Cole tore his arm free. The IV catheter flew. Blood sprayed, spotting a resident's mask. Restraints, the resident barked. Get restraints on him now. Cole surged off the mattress. The gurney tipped. A tray of instruments crashed to the floor, scalpels and clamps skittering across the tile. Stop him, Dr. Alvarez shouted. 2 orderlies lunged. Cole threw his weight sideways into one of them. Pain flared through the open wound, sharp and hot, but distant. His body moved the way it had been trained to move, every motion a reflex wired to survival. A security guard grabbed for his wrist. Cole twisted, ripping free shoulder, roaring breath hissing between his teeth. Nobody touch me, he roared. Outside the curtains, the main ER kept its rhythm. Monitors chimed, phones rang. In a corner by the supply cabinet, a nurse in light blue scrubs snapped on a fresh pair of gloves. Elena Cross had been stocking trauma kits when the radio call came through. Now she paused, listening to the noise behind the curtain. A crash, a barked order, a man's shouting voice shredded by fear. She glanced at the clock. 10 minutes past the end of her shift. Her backpack sat under the counter, the strap looped over one chair leg. Rough 1 and 2, a younger nurse said as she passed. Military. He almost decked Kyle in the hallway. Elena's hands kept moving, tucking gauze into a bin, straightening saline bags. Her movements were quick but not rushed. Security to Trauma 2, the overhead speaker called. Security to Trauma 2. The younger nurse flinched. You going home, Lena? She asked. Elena closed the cabinet, the latch clicking softly. She drew in a slow breath and let it out. Her pulse stayed even. I will finish this cart, she said. Then I will see. Her voice was low, almost gentle. Back in Trauma 2, the standoff tightened. 3 guards formed a loose semicircle inside the curtain. Tasers, holstered hands hovering near the grips, eyes locked on Cole. 2 residents and a respiratory therapist stood at the foot of the bed waiting for an opening. The monitor screamed in alarm, complaining about the jumps in his heart rate. Cole stood half off the gurney, one foot braced on the side rail, the other on slick tile. His hospital bracelet hung crooked around his wrist, streaked with his own blood. Chest heaving, eyes wild, mapping exits without thinking. Mercer, Dr. Alvarez said, If you do not calm down, I will have you sedated and restrained. You do not understand, Cole spat. You have no idea what is happening. He scanned the ceiling, the vents, the doorway. His hands opened and closed as if they still expected to find a rifle there or the weight of a teammate's grip. One of the guards touched his radio. Potentially armed, extremely combative, requesting permission to deploy taser, he murmured. Cole's gaze snapped to him. The guard's fingers settled on the grip. No one moved closer. From where she stood at the edge of the main ER, Elena could see only the tips of boots beyond the half-drawn curtain and the trembling shadow of the gurney. She heard the alarm tone sharp and insistent, and underneath it a man's breathing gone rough and ragged. Her cart was stocked. The cabinet door was shut. Her shift was technically over. Her hands did not shake. She slid the tray of gauze into place and stepped toward the noise. Elena moved toward Trauma 2, the soles of her shoes whispering on polished tile. The curtain was only a few steps away, a thin sheet of fabric holding back the chaos on the other side. Most nights by this hour, the noise had shifted into something different. Earlier in the evening, there were drunk drivers, playground injuries, kitchen accidents. After midnight came the ones no one wanted, the forgotten. The ones who smelled like the street or like cheap liquor, who talked to things no one else could see. Those were the ones Elena usually took. She liked the way the ER thinned out then. The fluorescent light stayed harsh, but the hallway chatter faded, phones rang less. Monitors beeped at a slower rhythm. The edges softened. It was easier to hear people when the crowd was gone. Cross will take room 5, someone would say, when a homeless man came in soaked in urine and rainwater, muttering at the ceiling. Nurse, crush psych, Holden 7, combative no family, you, good another voice would ask, already knowing the answer. I will go, she would say, and she did. She sat with the detoxing banker who vomited into a basin and begged to die. She sat with the teenage girl shaking in a paper gown, wrists wrapped, mascara streaked. Elena listened to their rambling, their silence, their anger. She checked vitals. She adjusted blankets. She told small, simple stories about nothing special until their breathing slowed. People called it patience. They called it kindness. They did not call it skill. At the nurse's station one afternoon a few weeks earlier, she had heard her name through the thin partition that separated the break room from the main hall. She is good-hearted for sure, one of the senior physicians said, but she is not fast enough for real trauma leadership. Too gentle. Put her on recovery, she will shine there. Another voice responded. She never complains, though. Picks up night shifts, takes the difficult cases. Alvarez likes that. Means he can put her anywhere. Elena had been sitting on the far end of the break room, a cup of coffee cooling between her palms. She listened for a moment, then stared at the surface of the coffee. A tiny bubble drifted from one side to the other, catching the light. Her face did not move. She finished the cup, rinsed it, and went back to charting. The night of the freeway pileup had been different. The call came in just after sunset. Heavy fog on the interstate. A semi-driver had jackknifed cars, had plowed into metal and into each other. By the time the first ambulance screamed into the bay, the ER was already shifting, stretching, gearing up. Mass casualty incoming, the charge nurse announced. Full trauma activation, all hands. Gurneys lined the hallway, empty and waiting. Plastic tubs of supplies appeared from nowhere. Gloves snapped. Voices took on a different tone, clipped and sharp. Elena moved quickly, checking drawers, restocking where hands had raided earlier in the day. She labeled beds, helped roll crash carts into position, taped triage tags to the footrails. The first wave slammed through the doors. Blood glass, ripped clothing. A child crying somewhere under the fluorescent buzz. Sirens outside overlapping. Head injury in Bay 1, possible spinal, someone shouted. Flail chest in 4. We have an open femur fracture coming in 5 or 6, make space. Elena stepped in and out of rooms like water filling gaps. She held pressure on one man's leg while a resident tied off a vessel. She pushed a portable monitor down the hall, weaving between bodies. She wiped blood from a little boy's face, then walked into another room without wiping her own. In Bay 3, a woman in her 50s lay strapped to a spinal board. Her hair was sticky with blood, a bruise blossomed along her jaw. Rear seat, no seatbelt, a paramedic reported. Lost consciousness, briefly now responsive. GCS 13. Dr. Alvarez leaned over her, focused on the obvious head wound. Pupils equal and reactive. CT as soon as we stabilize. That cut behind her ear is minor, clean it and close it, he said, already looking at the monitor. Elena moved to the far side of the bed where the woman's head nearly touched the rail. She reached for gauze. As she lifted the hair, something caught her eye. The cut behind the ear was not just a cut. Fresh blood seeped from a narrow point deep in the crease, each drop small but steady. It was not much to look at in the rush of everything else. A thin line of red in a sea of red. Elena's hand paused. She bent closer, ignoring the bustle around her. Her nose caught the copper smell of blood, the sharp chemical sting of antiseptic. Under her fingers, she felt a faint, abnormal swelling along the bone heat radiating from a spot that should have been cool. Doctor, she said. Alvarez did not turn. Clean and close cross. We have bigger problems here. She looked at the tiny bead of blood forming again, the almost invisible pulse behind it. I need a microsurgical kit, she said louder. A resident glanced over. We are not doing plastic surgery. We are trying not to lose people, he snapped. Elena's voice did not change. Now, she said. Something in the word made the room hesitate. A tech reached for the kit and handed it over. Elena took it, peeled open the sterile wrap, and snapped a lighted magnifier into place. The incision she made was small, delicate, hidden behind the ear where no one would think to look. The artery underneath had a nick that was leaking toward a catastrophe. It trembled under her instruments, thin and fragile. Seconds stretched. For a moment, the fog of the interstate vanished, and another scene flashed at the edge of her mind. A different night. A different patient. Her hand steady in the back of a vibrating vehicle, someone screaming in another language outside. She blinked once, returned to the woman in front of her, and clipped the vessel. The bleed stopped. The woman's blood pressure steadied on the monitor. Later in the official report, Dr. Alvarez's name appeared as the attending who identified and corrected a near-catastrophic arterial injury missed on initial survey. His photo went into the hospital newsletter, smiling beside a headline about excellence under pressure. In the locker room, when a younger nurse asked, "Doesn't that bother you at all?" Elena shook her head. "The woman is alive," she said. "That is the important part." Her tone was simple, not bitter, not saintly, just matter of fact. There were other small patterns no one quite noticed. In the staff lounge, the television mounted near the ceiling often showed news channels on mute. Footage from overseas flickered there, sometimes desert sand armored vehicles, rotors cutting the air. Whenever a segment like that appeared, Elena either picked up the remote and changed the channel, or she stood, tossed her coffee cup, and left the room without comment. "Bad memories," someone asked once, halfway joking. "Bad news," she said, "for everyone." On certain afternoons, military helicopters from the nearby base flew low over the city. The rotors made the windows hum in their frames, a steady thump that sank into the bones. The first time a new resident heard it, he looked up curious. "Kinda cool," he said. "Feels like a movie." Across the hall, Elena had paused at a supply cart. Her hand had gone to her chest palm, pressing for a second, as if she were checking her own pulse. Her eyes closed. She inhaled through her nose, counted silently, then let the breath go. The resident, noticing, had tilted his head. "Noise bothering you, Nurse Cross?" he asked. She opened her eyes and smiled, faint and polite. "It is just sound," she said. "We get used to it." In the mirror of the staff restroom, with her hair pulled up high to retie her ponytail, the thin white line at the base of her skull was clear. A pale crescent where skin had once rubbed raw under the pressure of something worn for a very long time. Another nurse caught sight of it as she walked in. "Ouch," she said. "Bike accident?" Elena twisted the elastic tighter and let the dark hair fall back over the scar. "Something like that," she replied. Now, as she reached the edge of trauma 2, all those small pieces sat just beneath her skin. The late nights, the pile-ups, the unseen corrections, the questions she never answered. The steady tightening in her chest whenever the air outside vibrated with rotor noise. She curled her fingers once, feeling the fine stretch of the glove at her knuckles, and drew the curtain aside. The air inside Trauma 2 felt thicker, as if the heat from too many bodies had nowhere to go. The monitor wailed in sharp, repetitive bursts. The metallic tang of blood hung over the plastic smell of tubing and the sting of antiseptic. Cole stood half-turned toward the door. Chest-bare shoulder wound leaking through a hastily pressed dressing. Sweat mixed with blood streaking down his arm. A strip of adhesive clung crooked over one flank, already soaked through. 3 security guards faced him. Their boots were planted wide, knees bent, just enough to move. Their hands hovered near their tasers, fingers flexing and curling. "Back off," one of them said quietly. "Do not make this worse for yourself, Sergeant." Cole's gaze cut from guard to guard. His pupils were huge, swallowing the hazel in his eyes. His breathing came in ragged pulls, each inhale catching. Behind him, the gurney listed a little from where he had shoved off of it. Instruments lay scattered on the floor, a tangle of shiny hooks and blades glinting under the overhead lights. Dr. Alvarez stood near the foot of the bed, jaw locked. A resident hovered at his side, clutching a clipboard like a shield. "We are wasting time," Alvarez snapped. "His pressure is crashing. Sedation now. Draw 10 of etomidate 4 of midazolam." The resident nodded, turned to the medication cart, and fumbled with a vial. Cole heard none of it as language. The words came through like static, blending with the memory of shouted call signs and coordinates. His mind layered the fluorescent panels with a night sky painted by tracers. The hiss of oxygen tubing became wind in his ears as a helicopter banked hard. He flinched at the shrill tone of the monitor, then fixed on the guard's hand drifting closer to the taser. "Do not touch that," he growled. "You are bleeding out, man." One guard tried again, softer. "Let the doctors help you." Cole's fingers flexed open, then closed. He did not have a rifle. He did not have a sidearm. The nearest tool was a metal clamp by his bare foot. He could feel the cool steel of it through the thin hospital sock. He shifted his weight the smallest bit. At the edge of the room, Elena took in the scene in a single glance. Positions, distances, the angle of Cole's stance, the set of his shoulders, the way his eyes never stopped moving. She stepped fully inside and let the curtain whisper shut behind her. "Cross, get out of there," the resident said, his voice high with nerves. "Security will handle this." Elena did not answer. She moved until she was inside the semicircle, but not close enough to crowd. She placed herself opposite the door, giving Cole a clear line to her and nowhere to move that was not through her. The guards flicked their eyes toward her, then back to him. Cole did not look at her. He kept her at the edge of his vision, body coiled. Every muscle screamed that he was still in the kill zone. The only exits were crowded. The people between him and those exits might as well have been enemy obstacles. Sergeant Mercer, Dr. Alvarez said sharply, "This is a hospital. You are safe. You will stand down, or we will sedate you by force." Cole laughed once, a hard, breathless sound. "Safe," he said. "Right." Elena listened to the tone, not defiant, not amused, frantic, close to the edge where language stopped working. She took 3 slow steps forward. Her hands stayed visible at her sides, fingers relaxed. "Staff Sergeant Mercer," she said. Her voice was calm, not soothing, not coaxing, simply steady. He twitched toward her eyes, narrowing. "Stay back," he warned. "You do not want to be this close to me." The monitor blared again, a sharp alarm. A nurse moved to silence it. The click of the button sounded loud in the pause. Elena stopped exactly 3 meters away. Close enough that she could see the lines of dirt at the edge of the tape on his arm, the flecks of asphalt stuck to his bruised knuckles. She met his gaze. "I have seen those eyes before," she said quietly. It was not a line meant to impress anyone. It was simply true. She saw the way his pupils hunted for threats, even when the conscious part of him tried to orient. The way his jaw clenched on words that did not match the pictures in his head. Something in him jolted at the sentence. A microsecond of hesitation, his fingers loosened. He frowned, trying to place her, to file her into known categories. Civilian, nurse, non-combatant. Everything in her face said ordinary. Light blue scrubs, dark hair pulled tight at the nape of her neck. No visible rank, no insignia, no dog tags. But her posture was not ordinary. Weight balanced, shoulders aligned, no fear in the eyes, no flinch. Elena took 1 more step, small, deliberate. She lowered her voice. The next words were almost a breath. "Ghost Hawk 49-0. They were 6 simple words. To everyone else in the room, they might as well have been numbers strung at random. For Cole, they hit like a round to the chest. Sound dropped out. For a second, the only thing he heard was his own heartbeat in his ears. The alarms blurred into a distant whine. The guard's hand on the taser, the bright light overhead, the curtain rustling in the air conditioner all went thin and far away. His knees buckled. He went down hard, catching himself on one hand, the other arm clamping over his side as fresh pain shot up his flank. "Jesus," the resident muttered. One of the guards surged forward, thinking he was lunging. Elena lifted a hand without looking away from Cole. "Hold," she said. The guard stopped. Cole stared at her. His breath came in ragged pulls, lips parted. Sweat ran along his temple, catching in his hair. "No one says that code," he rasped. No one outside the unit even heard it. A low moan came from a chair near the wall. An older man with a bandaged arm waiting to be stitched shifted. His face had gone pale. "That is a radio op code," he whispered to the nurse beside him. "Special operations stuff. Black file." "Who the hell is she?" Dr. Alvarez blinked as if trying to clear his vision. "What did you just say, Nurse Cross?" he asked. Elena did not answer him. Her eyes stayed on Cole's. "You are at St. Michael's," she said to him. "San Antonio. Not out there. Not anymore. Look at me." He locked onto her face. The room tilted, then steadied. The curtains were not tree lines. The overhead light was not a flare. The cold tile under his knee was not dirt. "Count your breaths," she said. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. 4 and 6 out." He shook his head. 49-0, he whispered again, as if tasting the numbers. Her jaw twitched once, almost imperceptibly. "Yes," she said. One of the guards shifted his weight, impatience bleeding into his stance. "He is still a threat," the guard said. "He attacks staff." Elena did not raise her voice. "He is bleeding," she said, "and he is obeying. He moves because he is scared, not because he wants to hurt you." "That is not your call," Alvarez snapped. "You do not have authority to negotiate with him. Step aside, Cross. Let us sedate him and secure the airway before he crashes." Cole's head snapped toward the doctor at the word sedate. "You sedate me. I do not wake up," he said thickly. "They come back and I am gone." His accent flattened into the rhythm he used on the radio sentences, compacted, grammar stripped. Elena took another half step closer, entering his reach on purpose. She lowered herself until she was almost at his eye level, not crouching enough to make it look like she was shrinking only enough to meet him there on the floor. "Sergeant," she said. "Steady as a metronome. If you bleed any more, none of this will matter. You know that? You know what blood loss does? You have seen it." His gaze flicked to the dressing on his shoulder, the bandage at his flank. The red seeping through was slower now, but still there, blooming in irregular patterns. "You need pressure," she said. "You need fluids. You need stitches that are not done by your own shaking hands. You can fight all of us until you pass out, or you can let us work." He swallowed. His throat clicked. Only you, he said hoarsely, no one else. Everyone heard it. The resident made a face. He cannot dictate his care team, he protested. That is not how this works. If she does not do it, I will. Cole snapped some of the fire, returning. I will sew the damn thing myself. He tried to push himself up. His arm trembled under him. Elena reached out and placed her palm flat on his uninjured shoulder. The contact was firm. Not a pat, not a comfort stroke, an anchor. Stay down, she said. You are not in the field. You are in my bay now. For a second, something flared behind his eyes. Recognition, the tone, the phrasing, the absolute matter-of-fact authority. He stopped fighting gravity. Behind Elena, Dr. Alvarez pinched the bridge of his nose. This is absurd, he muttered. Fine. Here is what will happen. You will do an initial field dressing and temporary closure. Then my resident will complete the full suturing. You understand cross? Elena nodded once. That will work, she said. We do not have time to argue about titles. She straightened, keeping one hand light on Cole's shoulder so he knew she was still there, and turned her head toward the nearest nurse. I need fresh dressings, lidocaine, and a suture kit, she said, and I need his vitals back on the monitor where they belong. The room moved almost in spite of itself. People responded to the cadence of the orders. The guard nearest the door holstered his taser and stepped back, clearing a path. Cole let his head rest against the raised head of the bed as they eased him back onto it. His breath still came fast, but the sharp edge had dulled. His eyes tracked Elena as she pulled a stool close and stripped a soaked dressing away from his shoulder. Who are you? He whispered too low for anyone else to hear. She picked up a piece of gauze, her hand steady. Right now, she said, I am the person stopping you from bleeding out on this floor. She did not look up. She did not let her voice betray the way his question settled under her ribs, pressing against things she had not touched in a long time. The stool creaked a little as Elena sat. She drew in close to Cole's shoulder, close enough to smell the mix of sweat, gunpowder residue, and cheap ambulance soap clinging to his skin. Pressure cuff back on, she said. I want that number. A nurse slipped the cuff around Cole's arm and hit the button. The machine hummed, squeezing his bicep. Cole winced but did not pull away. 88/50, the nurse reported. Heart rate 132. Hang normal saline wide open, Elena said. Let me know if that pressure drops under 80 again. Dr. Alvarez stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, looking as though he wanted to argue and had decided to save it for later. Elena peeled back the last of the blood-soaked dressing on Cole's shoulder. The wound beneath was deep, an ugly crescent carved into muscle where something sharp had caught and torn. The edges were ragged. Fresh blood oozed, not spurting but steady. She leaned in her face, blank her eyes sharp. On a scale from 1 to 10, she said, How much do you like honesty, Sergeant? Cole swallowed. Depends who is talking, he said. This is going to hurt, Elena replied. She picked up a bulb syringe and flushed saline over the wound. The liquid was cool against overheated skin. Dirt and clotted blood washed away in pink streams that dripped into a basin. Cole's jaw clenched hard enough that the muscles at his temple jumped. He did not make a sound. Hold him steady, she murmured. A nurse and one of the security guards each placed a hand on Cole's uninjured side, not pinning him, only ready if his body bucked. Elena's gloved fingers moved with a confidence that made the resident watching bristle and stare. She explored the depth of the wound with gentle but firm pressure, searching for debris, for foreign metal, for any sign of vascular damage she could not see. Cole hissed when she hit a tender edge. His left hand shot out, groping for something, for a strap, a rifle, a comrade. His fingers found only air. Elena shifted her elbow and placed her free hand over his palm to palm. Right here, she said quietly. His grip tightened around her glove, the latex squeaking faintly. The contact grounded the wild arc of his panic for a moment. He focused on the feel of bones and tendons under her skin instead of the echo in his head. Her hands were small compared to his, but they did not tremble. They did not jerk. Each movement had the clean economy of someone who had repeated these exact actions in far worse conditions. The resident cleared his throat. You see anything deeper, he asked, trying to sound like he was leading. No arterial spurting, Elena said. Muscle is torn, but no obvious tendon involvement. I'm going to close the deeper layer just enough to control bleeding, then you can finish. She reached for the lidocaine, drawing it up with quick, efficient pulls of the plunger. As the needle slid into the skin around the wound, the resident winced more than Cole did. You have done this before, he muttered. Once or twice, she said. The numbing agent spread in a slow burn. Cole's grip on her hand eased as the pain dulled to pressure. His eyes were still locked on her face. Outside the curtain, the ER continued to move, but its rhythm had changed. Voices were lower, less frantic. People spoke around the edges of what was happening in Trauma 2, glancing over with a mixture of curiosity and unease. At the triage chairs, the older man with the bandaged arm watched the gap in the curtain as if he expected ghosts to come walking out. Ghost hawk, he murmured under his breath. Thought they were all gone. Inside, Elena threaded the first suture through the deeper tissue of Cole's shoulder. The needle pierced and emerged with steady precision, her hands working in tiny, exact motions. She tied the knot, cut the thread, moved to the next point. The overhead light reflected off a faint sheen of sweat at her hairline. A strand of dark hair slipped free from her ponytail and fell forward. She blew it away once, but it dropped right back to the base of her neck. "Do you need a tie?" the younger nurse asked, half whispering as she passed by with a tray of supplies. "I am fine," Elena said. She leaned forward to catch a better angle, lifting her chin. The loose strand slid higher, revealing the thin white scar at the edge of her hairline. Under the bright light, it was more visible than it ever was in the soft reflection of the restroom mirror. Cole saw it. The line of pale, healed skin curved just where the band of a headset would sit, the mark of long friction rubbed in the same place day after day. Not a bike accident, not a clumsy fall. His breath hitched. "That is not hospital work," he said softly. Elena did not look up. "Hold still," she replied, her tone neutral. "You are making my stitches crooked." He huffed out a short laugh that turned into a cough. "You talk like a team medic," he said, always bossy when someone is leaking. A flicker moved behind her eyes, amusement quickly smoothed away. "Better than quiet while you drift," she said. "Talk if you want, or do not, but breathe." He obeyed without thinking, drawing another breath through his nose, letting it out slow. Dr. Alvarez shifted his weight at the end of the bed. "Pressure is 92/58, the nurse reported. Heart rate 120. "Keep the fluids running," Elena said. "We will get him somewhere safer than this bay." Alvarez exhaled. "Once you finish those deep sutures, we will move him to Trauma 1, he said. "I want a chest x-ray and a CT of the abdomen." The words barely left his mouth before a new sound cut through the room. It was small at first, thin and distant. A series of pops that did not belong to the hospital soundscape of beeps and clicks. They filtered in through walls and vents carried from the streets outside. Gunshots. They came in short staccato bursts. Someone in the waiting room startled and dropped a coffee cup. It hit the floor and shattered the crash, swallowed by the next crack of distant fire. The guard nearest the door pressed a hand to his earpiece. "Security to dispatch," he said. "Hearing possible shots east of the hospital. You got anything?" The response buzzed back, faint but urgent. "Units en route to a scene 3 blocks out. Reports of multiple injured, possible ongoing confrontation." The nurse at the supply cabinet froze with a box of gloves in her hands. "You have got to be kidding," she whispered. Elena did not pause her stitch. The needle went in, came out, the thread pulled snug. Her voice stayed level. "Finish that call outside the bay," she told the guard. "We do not need more noise in here." He stepped back through the curtain, murmuring into the radio. Cole's jaw clenched. "It is not over," he said. "They are still out there." Elena tied off the last of the deeper sutures in his shoulder and began laying the first of the surface stitches. "Look at me," she said. He dragged his eyes away from the ceiling, from the direction of the faint gunfire, and focused on her face again. "You are inside reinforced walls," she said. "You have guards and officers and half the city between you and that sound. Right now your mission is simple. Stay on this bed. Keep your blood inside your body. Let us bring you back from the edge." The words were clinical, but the cadence was familiar. It sounded like a briefing given behind a blast door before a drop. It sounded like someone who had once lined up green shapes on a map and told them where not to die. He swallowed. "Yes, ma'am," he said before he could stop himself. A nurse glanced up at the term. Elena did not react. She moved to the wound at his flank, pulling away the soaked bandage with care. This one was smaller, but no less dangerous, a glancing bullet track near vital territory. She studied it, then nodded once. "We will close this one enough to protect it, then get imaging," she said. "You did not give them a clean shot." His lips twitched. "They did not deserve one," he said. Her hands worked with the same precise rhythm. Clean, numb, stitch, knot, cut. By the time she finished, the basin under the bed was full of stained gauze, the worst of the bleeding under control. The heart monitor had settled into a fast but not frantic pace. "Field dressing complete," she said. "He is stable enough to move within the unit." The resident stepped in, already gloved eyes focused on the neat line of temporary sutures. "I will take it from here," he said, trying to reclaim some authority. "We can refine the closure and minimize scarring." "Do not chase perfect," Elena said. "Chase functional. You have 5 minutes before we lose imaging to whatever is coming through those doors." He opened his mouth and thought better of whatever protest had formed. Outside, the overhead speaker crackled to life. "Code triage external. All available staff to intake. Multiple casualties inbound." The words rolled through the ER, changing its shape again. Nurses moved faster. The charge nurse grabbed a clipboard and started reallocating rooms. Elena stripped off her bloody gloves and dropped them into the bin. She pulled on a fresh pair, the snap echoing faintly. She checked Cole's face one more time. His skin was still pale but not gray. His pupils were less blown. His grip when he reached for the rail of the bed was strong. "You held," she said quietly. He looked at her hand as it adjusted the sheet over his chest. "So did you," he replied. Her mouth curved in something that was not quite a smile. She turned to the nurse at the head of the bed. "Keep him on the monitor. Do not let anyone move him without my say or Dr. Alvarez's," she said. "Page me if his pressure drops." Then she stepped back through the curtain into the main ER, where sirens were already rising in the distance, headed straight for St. Michael's. The sirens grew louder until they pressed against the windows. The whole front of St. Michael's seemed to vibrate with the sound. By the time Elena stepped back into the main ER, the doors were already sliding open and shut in a staccato rhythm. Gurneys rolled through, wet shoes squeaked, radio chatter spilled in from the bay. 2 incoming chest wounds, officer down lower extremity bleed, unidentified male unconscious possible head trauma. The charge nurse stood by the entrance with a clipboard and a marker calling out assignments like a conductor shaping an orchestra. Bay 3 officer with leg injury, 4 chest trauma, 5 overflow, anyone not critical into hall beds now. Elena moved without thinking about the map. Her body knew it better than her eyes. She intercepted a stretcher as it crossed the threshold, hands going straight to the bloody bundle at the center. Young male, early 20s. Shirt cut open, makeshift pressure bandage over the side of his chest. Blood soaked through the gauze, dark and sticky. "What have we got?" she asked the paramedic. "GSW left chest," he said between breaths. Breath sounds diminished. Sat dropping on rote. Vitals borderline. "Bay 4, she called. "We need trauma in 4 now." She ran beside the gurney, holding the bandage in place. The kid's eyes cracked open. "Am I going to die?" he gasped. "Not tonight," Elena said, her tone as even as if she were giving directions. "You picked a busy time, that is all." He gave a weak laugh that turned into a cough. Pink froth appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Grab a chest tube tray," she told the nearest nurse, "and get respiratory here." She handed the patient off to the team in Bay 4, staying long enough to be sure someone had eyes on his airway and his blood pressure before stepping back. The hallway was already filling. 2 police officers, both bleeding but upright, leaned against a wall while techs wrapped their arms. A woman sat slumped in a wheelchair, dazed, streaks of mascara tracking down her face. Over the overhead noise, the hospital paging system droned. Dr. Kim to radiology, Dr. Mehta to surgery. It was the kind of chaos Elena understood. It had edges, it had rules. Triage, stabilize, move. She checked the board. Trauma 2 still had Cole's name written in red. Trauma 1 was marked as ready. She noted that the resident had already moved on to refining her sutures as if a neat stitch could erase the way the room had almost detonated. At the nurse's station, the younger nurse who had spoken to Elena earlier stood with a phone pressed to her ear, eyes wide. "Security says they are coordinating with base police," she reported to anyone listening. The shooting started closer to the base and spilled out. Elena nodded once. "Keep the hall clear," she said. "We need a path from the doors to the bays." She turned to head back toward Trauma 2, intending to check Cole's vitals and make sure no one had decided to be creative with his orders. Halfway down the hall, the air changed. The automatic doors at the entrance slid open again. This time, the people who stepped through did not push gurneys or carry med bags. They moved in a tight formation, boots heavy on tile. 6 men and 1 woman in dark uniforms, not the usual fatigues from the nearby base. Their uniforms were cleaner, sharper the insignia at their shoulders, more discreet. The man in front carried a folder instead of a weapon. His hair was regulation short, graying at the temple's jaw, shadowed with the kind of stubble that said he had chosen not to shave rather than forgotten. His eyes swept the ER in one practice pass, cataloging exits personnel threats. The security guard at the front desk straightened. "Can I help you?" he asked. The man with the folder flipped it open just enough to flash an ID and something that looked official, heavy with seals and signatures. "Captain Ross Kane, Internal Field Verification," he said. His voice carried without a shout. "We are here to transfer custody of Staff Sergeant Cole Mercer." The charge nurse looked up from her clipboard. "What kind of transfer?" she asked. "He is in critical condition." "Classified directive," Kane said. "We will handle details with your administrator. For now, you can tell us where he is." Elena stopped. The last of the sirens outside faded as ambulances pulled into place. Somewhere behind her, a patient groaned. The smell of blood and wet concrete drifted in. For a moment, those normal ER sounds receded under the simple vibration of Kane's words. Ross Kane. Elena had never heard the name. She had seen his type. Dr. Alvarez stepped out from behind a curtain, wiping his hands on a disposable towel. The frustration that had been simmering in his posture eased when he spotted Kane. "You are here for Sergeant Mercer?" he asked. Kane turned toward him. His quick smile did not reach his eyes. "Yes, doctor. Orders from above. There are concerns about operational security in relation to his injuries. He should not be in a civilian facility." Alvarez let out a sigh that was nearly relief. "He has been extremely combative," he said. and we are already stretched thin. If the military can take him to a secure ward and manage his care there, that will be best for everyone. Elena watched the exchange. She read the lazy confidence in Kane's shoulders, the way he assumed compliance as his default. She saw the way Alvarez angled his body unconsciously, giving ground, handing off the problem. Trauma 2, Alvarez said. He is there. He was just stabilized. We can bring him out for you if you give us a moment. That will not be necessary, Kane replied. We will go to him. He nodded once to his team. Elena stepped from her place near the wall into their path. She did not rush. She did not raise her hands. She simply arrived there as if she had every right to stand exactly where she was. Trauma 2 is a sterile area, she said. You cannot take that many people in. One, maybe two properly gowned. Kane glanced down at her name badge. The corner of his mouth twitched. Nurse Cross, he read. I understand your concern, but this is not a suggestion. The sergeant is under military jurisdiction. We are here to execute that. You are here to move a critically wounded patient, Elena said. He is not cleared for transfer yet. The charge nurse shifted her weight, caught between protocols. The directive is from the military, Elena, Dr. Alvarez said. They have transport and their own trauma teams. Let them handle it. He is hypotensive, barely stabilized, and just had deep sutures placed, Elena said. Her voice did not sharpen. It remained as level as if she were reading a set of vitals. Moving him risks blowing every clot we just coaxed into place. That is not your call to make, Kane replied, impatience seeping into his tone. This directive overrides your internal procedures. He opened the folder fully, now revealing several pages stamped with serious-looking seals and blocks of dense text. He held it out toward Dr. Alvarez. If you like paperwork, you can read it, he said. It will say the same thing I just did. He leaves with us now. Alvarez skimmed the first page. The jargon, the acronyms, the references to statutes he did not know well washed over him. The only part that landed was the string of titles printed under a signature line. Looks legitimate to me, he said. I do not think we have authority to get in the way of this. Elena did not accept that as a conclusion. She held out her hand. May I see it, she asked. Kane hesitated a fraction, then passed her the folder as if indulging a child. She did not read every word. There was no time. Her eyes skimmed quickly, picking out meaningful strokes. Dates, names, office headers, an acronym she recognized that did not belong with the others. A judge advocate office referenced but not signed. She flipped to the second page. There was a signature bold and sweeping, no printed name under it. She lifted her gaze to Kane. This is incomplete, she said. His jaw tightened. It is active, he corrected. You cite JAG oversight here, she said, touching a line with one gloved finger, but there is no JAG name, no code, and no contact. The date on this section is 3 weeks ago. This injury is from tonight. Our processes are not your concern, he said. Your concern is that a violent patient is removed from your floor. Elena closed the folder and handed it back without looking away from him. My concern, she said, is that a patient in hemorrhagic risk is being moved for reasons that have nothing to do with his medical stability. A ripple went through the staff within earshot. Nurses who had been pretending not to listen stopped pretending. The security guard by the desk shifted his stance, uncertain. Kane smiled again, this time less pleasant. There are larger considerations in play, he said. Ones you are not cleared to understand. You are a civilian nurse. I am sure you are very good at your job. Stay in that lane. The word lane slid across her like oil. She felt the familiar tug in her chest when someone in a different uniform tried to push her into a corner she no longer accepted. Article 12, she said calmly. Combat trauma override. Critically compromised patients are not to be moved without explicit consent from the treating tactical authority. Silence took a firmer hold this time. Even the distant sirens seemed to fade. Kane blinked. That is not a hospital policy, he said. It is not, Elena agreed. One of the hospital security guards, the older one with gray at his temples and a belly that said he had been out of the field for a while, straightened slowly. His eyes sharpened. Where did you hear that language, he asked. Elena did not take her gaze off Kane. A patient at risk of decompensation is not a piece of property, she said. You do not get to drag him out because someone higher than you prefers fewer questions. Alvarez cleared his throat, uneasy. Elena. I do not know that clause, he said. Is that military? Yes, she said. Kane's team shifted behind him, exchanging glances. One of them, a younger officer with a tight jaw, looked more uncomfortable than the rest. Kane held out his hand, palm up. Step aside, Nurse Cross, he said. You are out of your depth. We are taking the sergeant now. My men will bring a stretcher in and transfer him. He gestured, and 2 of his people started forward down the hall toward Trauma 2. Elena moved before anyone else could. She planted herself squarely in front of the bay door. Her frame was small, but she filled the doorway completely from their perspective. Her shoulders were relaxed, but there was no space around her posture for argument to slip through. "The patient is medically unfit for movement," she said. "You do not have clearance from his attending to alter his care plan." Kane's smile vanished. "I have clearance from the chain of command," he said, his voice hardening, "which outweighs whatever you think you have." He stepped closer so they were nearly eye to eye. "Who exactly," he asked, softly, "do you think you are to stand in front of me and say no?" Around them the ER held its breath. Elena lifted one hand to the neckline of her scrub top. Her fingers found the edge of the fabric. She pulled it aside just enough for the ink over her heart to start to show. The ink over Elena's heart was black and precise even under the harsh fluorescent light. A bird of prey spread its wings, wide feathers stylized in sharp, clean lines. Its head tilted as if it were caught in mid-swoop, eyes fixed on something below. Just beneath the curve of one talon, a small number had been worked into the design. The hallway went very still. The younger nurse closest to Elena sucked in a breath. The resident, who had been charting at the station, looked up, pen frozen in mid-stroke. The older security guard with the gray at his temples stared as if the past had reached out and grabbed him by the throat. "You have got to be kidding," he whispered. Kane's gaze dropped to the tattoo, then snapped back to her face. "That is cute," he said. "Regrettable, but cute. I have squad tattoos myself. It does not change what is happening here." The older guard shook his head slowly. "No," he said, "that is not some squad logo." He stepped closer, squinting as if the details might prove him wrong. "I was deployed near Kandahar when they started whispering about a Ghost Hawk unit," he said, voice unsteady. "No patches, no names, just stories about a team that dropped in where things were already broken and walked people out when no one else could. Bird of prey with a number under it. 6 was the medic, they said." Elena's eyes flicked to him for the first time. Something unreadable passed there, a brief acknowledgement, then smoothed into neutral again. Kane's mouth tightened. "Urban legends," he said. "You were hearing bar talk." The guard did not back down. "Bar talk does not get Article 12 right," he said. "That is combat doctrine. That is not on Google." A few of the nurses exchanged glances. They had heard Elena quote a rule none of them recognized. Now there was a medic's story to go with it. Kane's team shifted on their feet. One of them, the younger officer with the tight jaw, darted a quick look at the tattoo, and then away, as if it burned to stare for too long. "Enough," Kane said sharply. "I do not care what myth you think she is. She is a nurse in a civilian hospital. She does not outrank the United States Army. Stand aside, Cross." He stepped into her space. Elena did not move back. Her scrub top fell back into place as she released the neckline. The bird vanished from sight, but the impression of it remained in the air like the echo of rotor wash. "You are attempting to remove a patient who has been identified as both medically unstable and a critical witness," she said. "You are doing so with incomplete legal paperwork and without coordination with JAG. You are hoping no one here knows that." Kane's eyes flashed. "I am not in the habit of explaining myself," he said. "Last chance. Move." The older security guard glanced between them, then made a choice. He unclipped his radio from his belt thumb, resting near the button, but did not speak. His other hand settled on his own sidearm. Not as a threat to anyone in scrubs, but as a reminder that he was not just furniture by the door. "You are not the only uniform in this building, Captain," he said quietly. "Do not forget that." Kane turned his head toward him, incredulous. "Are you threatening to draw on a superior officer?" he asked. The guard gave a half shrug. "I am saying I will not stand by while you drag a half-alive soldier out of here on a bogus order," he said. "If she is who I think she is, you are the one out of your depth." Kane looked back at Elena. His voice dropped. "I do not know what game you are playing," he said, "or who you used to be, but Ghost Hawk was scrubbed. Files closed unit disbanded. They do not exist." Elena held his gaze. "We exist enough that you know the name," she said. Something inside Kane flickered, a small crack in the hard surface. He covered it quickly, lifting his chin. "This is a waste of time," he snapped. "Get in there and roll the stretcher out." 2 of his team started forward again. Their eyes avoided hers as they moved, focusing on the number over the Trauma 2 door. Elena shifted her stance by the barest degree. It was not a large movement, but it was decisive. There was no path past her that did not involve physically putting hands on her. "You touch that door," she said, "and I will document every contact, every name, every step you take with that patient. The next person who sees that report will have the word felony on their desk." The younger officer paused mid-stride. "Sir," he said under his breath, "this is messy. If she logs it with Article 12 language attached, it will get reviewed higher." Kane glared at him. "We have a directive," he said. "We do our job." The officer hesitated. "And if she really has that kind of clearance history," he said, barely audible, "then whoever signed that directive may not cover us when it blows back." There it was. The crack widened. It was one thing to bully a civilian nurse and an overworked ER staff. It was another to tangibly risk being on the wrong side of a classification line that could wipe out careers in a heartbeat. Kane glanced down the hall toward the doors as if he could still see escape there. His fingers tightened on the folder. Dr. Alvarez, sensing the shift, tried to find a middle path. "Look," he said, forced calm in his tone. "No one wants a jurisdiction battle. Captain, if we can stabilize him for an hour, arrange transport with actual medical oversight, it would be safer." "Nurse Cross, perhaps we can coordinate with their unit doctor, make sure care is continuous." The suggestion floated between them, fragile. Kane cut it down. "We are not negotiating our timeline," he said, "and we are not sharing information about an ongoing internal matter with civilians." He leaned in, voice pitched low. "You talk a good game, Cross," he said. "You know things you should not. Maybe you did something impressive once, but you are not in that world anymore. Here you are, a nurse with a name tag, and I have orders." Elena did not step back. Her hands stayed loose at her sides, but her eyes had gone very cold. "Here," she said just as quietly, "I am the person standing between your negligence and a death certificate." She lifted her chin a fraction. "If Sergeant Mercer goes into arrest because you ignored his condition to satisfy someone's fear of what he might say," she added, "I will sit in front of a judge and lay out every choice you made in this hallway. I will do it under oath. I will use your full rank and your full name." She did not raise her volume. The effect was as if someone had turned the temperature down 10 degrees. Kane's throat worked. For the first time, he looked less like a man executing a plan and more like one calculating risk. The older guard watched him carefully. "Permission to speak freely," Captain, the guard said. Kane gave a sharp jerk of his head that passed for permission. "I know what it looks like when someone comes in hot trying to erase a witness," the guard said. "I saw it a few decades back in a different theater. It took me a long time to sleep normal after that. You do not want this on your jacket." One of the nurses, who usually walked with her shoulders hunched, lifted her chin a little as she listened. The residents at the station pretended to double-check lab results, not wanting to miss a word. Kane exhaled through his nose. He turned back to Elena. "This is not over," he said. "You understand that?" "Yes," she replied. "We will be back with whatever signatures you think you need to see," he said. "And when we are, I will remember that you chose to interfere." Her expression did not change. "You do not frighten me, Captain," she said. He stared at her another long second, then jerked his head toward his team. "Fall back," he ordered. It happened all at once. The tension that had held his group taut loosened. Shoulders dropped half an inch. Boots turned on the tile. The little unit that had marched in so sure of itself turned away from the door of Trauma 2 and headed back toward the main exit. As they passed the triage chairs, the older man with the bandaged arm looked up, eyes wide. "They are leaving?" he asked the nurse beside him. "For now," she murmured. Kane stopped just short of the threshold. The rain had started again outside, tapping lightly at the glass. He looked over his shoulder one last time. "You think a bird on your chest and a code phrase will save you from consequences," he said. "It will not." Elena stood where she had been the whole time in front of the bay that held Cole. "I do not expect to be saved," she said. "I expect him to stay alive long enough to speak." Kane's jaw clenched. He stepped through the doors and was gone, swallowed by the night and the waiting vehicles. The doors slid shut behind him, muting the outside world. The ER slowly remembered to breathe. Conversation started up again, first in low murmurs, then in louder bursts. What just happened? Did she really quote some classified whatever at him? Did you see his face when she showed that tattoo? The younger nurse who had stood near Elena reached out and touched her own collarbone unconsciously, as if checking for a mark she did not have. Elena adjusted her scrub top, covering the last hint of ink, and turned back toward Trauma 2. Dr. Alvarez stepped into her path. For a moment, he simply looked at her as if he were trying to reconcile two overlapping images in his head. The quiet night shift nurse who stalked carts and held hands. The woman who had just stared down an armed military team without raising her voice. "You knew exactly what you were doing," he said slowly. "Yes," she said. "How many things that I have dismissed out of hand have you been right about?" he asked. She considered. "I do not keep count," she said. He huffed out a breath that could have been a laugh or something else. "Get back to your patient," he said. "We will talk later." She nodded and slipped past him, pulling the curtain to Trauma 2 aside. Inside, Cole lay where she had left him, a fresh dressing taped over his shoulder sutures, his bare chest rising and falling in quick but steady breaths. His eyes were open. "I heard boots," he said. "I told them no," Elena replied. His gaze traveled to her collar where the fabric had shifted earlier. His voice dropped. "They saw it?" he asked. "For a moment," she said. He exhaled something like relief and dread tangled together. The older security guard lingered just outside the curtain. He spoke to the younger nurse, keeping his voice low, but not low enough to miss entirely. "She knows Article 12, he said, and she shut down an internal verification team with 3 sentences. "That is military medic stuff," the younger one whispered back. "How can she be working here if she is that?" The guard shook his head. Maybe she got tired, he said, or maybe this is where she fights now. Their words floated around the edges of the bay. On the bed, Cole watched Elena move around the monitors, checking lines and numbers with quick glances. Who are you, really? He asked. She paused for a beat, then reset the blood pressure cuff with a deft tug. Right now, she said, I am the one making sure the people who want you quiet are going to have to wait. His fingers closed around the side rail, knuckles whitening. He nodded once. Outside, a new set of sirens began to rise. Inside, hands moved charts, updated orders written. The shape of the night had changed, but it had not ended. The new sirens blended with the old ones until the sound became a single restless howl outside the hospital. For a few minutes, that was all anyone heard. Then another sound threaded through it, lower, heavier, a slow rhythmic thump that started in the air and sank into glass and bone. The windows of St. Michael's hummed in their frames. Everyone in the ER who had ever lived near the base knew that sound. Heads lifted, conversations broke off mid-sentence. Is that a bird? The younger nurse asked before she caught herself. I mean, a helo? The charge nurse glanced up at the ceiling at the dust, trembling along the edge of a fluorescent fixture. Too close for a regular transport, she said. They do not land on the hospital roof without a reason. Out on the street, ambulance sirens faded as the new arrival drew over them. The steady thump of rotors washed across the building, not passing by this time, but settling. On the roof, a Black Hawk touched down on the helipad, dark against the wet concrete. Its blades churned the rain into a silver mist. The insignia on its side was small and subdued, not the wide, clear markings of a standard medevac. Its crew moved fast, heads low, dragging the weight of the sky with them as they sprinted for the rooftop access door. In Trauma 2, the noise rolled through the ceiling like distant thunder. Cole's eyes widened. That is not base transport, he said. Elena glanced up once, then back at the monitor. Keep breathing, she said. Whatever that is, it is not shooting at you. He listened to the rhythm of the rotors anyway. His ear had learned to judge distance and intent from that pattern. Whoever was in that bird was not just passing through. A moment later, the stairwell door at the end of the ER hallway flew open. Air rushed in ahead of the people carrying the faint scent of aviation fuel. A group of soldiers in black tactical gear entered in a tight column. Their helmets were off, but the way they moved spoke of rehearsed drills. Body armor sat high and snug, weapons stayed slung but ready. At their head walked a man in his 40s with close-cut brown hair and the insignia of a major on his chest. His gaze swept the ER once, catching everything without lingering. The security guard at the desk straightened again. His hand went to the radio, then stopped when he saw the patch on the major's sleeve. Not regular infantry, something sharper. The charge nurse stepped forward, clipboard still in hand. Can I help you? She began. The major's eyes had already found what he was looking for. Not the board, not the cluster of gurneys, but the number over a curtain halfway down the hall. Who is in charge of this floor? He asked. Dr. Alvarez is the attending, she said. I am the charge nurse on shift. I am not asking about titles, the major replied. I am asking who spoke the Ghost Hawk code. Silence dropped over the nearest stretch of hallway. Even those who did not know what the words meant felt the weight in the way he said them. At the far end, Elena stepped out of Trauma 2. Her hands were still gloved. A faint line from the elastic of her mask marked her cheeks. She took in the new faces, the gear, the insignia, and the question hanging in the air. I did, she said. The major turned fully toward her. For a second, he just looked. His eyes locked on her face first, then on the badge at her chest, then on the hint of ink that showed where her scrub top had slipped out of place in the earlier confrontation. He stopped 3 steps away. Then he straightened his spine and lifted his hand in a sharp, formal salute. Ma'am, he said. The word cracked across the ER like a dropped tray. The resident at the station dropped his pen this time. It bounced once on the counter and rolled off, hitting the floor in a small clatter that no one bent to pick up. The younger nurse stared openly. The charge nurse's mouth fell open before she snapped it shut again. Dr. Alvarez appeared from a side bay, drawn by the shift in noise. He caught the salute, the title, the way the special operations team had oriented toward Elena, as if she were a fixed point. What is going on? He asked, not expecting anyone to answer him. Elena's expression did not change much. Maybe the lines at the corners of her eyes tightened. Maybe her shoulders seemed a little heavier. Major, she said, you came fast. Special Operations Command does not take Ghost Hawk codes lightly, he replied. We picked up the chatter 40 minutes ago. Someone at base heard that a civilian nurse broke a panic state with a phrase that was supposed to die with a unit that does not officially exist. He let his hand fall, the salute completed. His posture stayed formal. Verification team beat you here, Elena said. They tried to remove Sergeant Mercer. I saw them on their way out downstairs, he said. They did not look pleased. They lacked paperwork, she said. A flicker of dry humor crossed his face and was gone. They lack a lot of things, he said, which is why I'm here. He turned so that his voice carried to the staff gathered within earshot. I am Major Ethan Ward, United States Army, he said. I am here under direct orders from Special Operations Command. If this is the same Elena Cross who served as Ghost Hawk 6, then she's now granted temporary tactical authority over the security and medical protection of Staff Sergeant Cole Mercer for the next 48 hours. He spoke the words like a briefing, crisp and undeniable. They hung in the fluorescent light settling over the ER like a new set of rules. The charge nurse blinked. Temporary, what she asked. Tactical authority, Ward repeated. In plain language, any attempt to move or interfere with that patient without her consent or the consent of his attending physician will be treated as a breach of a special operations directive and investigated accordingly. He let that sink in. One of the techs at the back whispered, "Is this real?" to no one in particular. Dr. Alvarez looked from Ward to Elena. "You are saying she outranks you in this situation?" he asked. "In this situation," Ward said, "I'm saying that if she tells you a movement is medically unsafe, you would be very smart to listen." He shifted back to Elena. "Ma'am," he said again, quieter, "if you confirm that you are Ghost Hawk 6, I have orders to brief you further in a secure space. For now, I need your assessment. Is Mercer stable enough to stay here for the next few hours?" Elena glanced toward Trauma 2, where the curtain still hung motionless. "His pressure is holding," she said. "Wounds are closed enough to prevent immediate bleed out. He needs imaging and monitoring. Moving him out of this controlled environment tonight would be reckless." "Then he stays," Ward said simply. He turned to the hospital's security guards. "You heard her," he said. "No one in or out of that bay without clearance from her or from Dr. Alvarez. If anyone flashes papers and tries to do otherwise, you log their names and you call the number I'm about to give you." He pulled a small card from a pocket and held it out to the older guard. The man took it carefully as if it were made of something fragile. "Yes, sir," the guard said. Ward looked back at Elena, and for the first time since he had arrived, his shoulders dropped a fraction. "Some of us never believed the whole team went down," he said low enough that only she and the nearest nurse could hear. "Good to see at least one rumor turned out right." For a heartbeat, old images pushed at the edges of her composure. Sand, smoke, the outline of a bird painted on the side of a helicopter as it lifted off. Faces half hidden behind dust goggles. "We all got scattered," she said. "I landed here." His gaze took in the monitors, the curtains, the harried staff, the scuffed tile. "Looks like you built another battlefield," he said. She did not respond to that. She just inclined her head the smallest bit. Behind Ward, one of his operators shifted. "Request permission to set security at the entrance, sir," he said. "If they sent verification once, they can send them again." "Do it," Ward said. "2 at the main doors, 1 at the stairs, 1 outside Trauma 2. Coordinate with hospital security. Try not to scare the civilians more than they already are." The operator nodded and moved off, his team splitting with him, folding themselves into the edges of the ER like new pieces added to an old map. The younger nurse watched them go, eyes bright. "I cannot believe a major just saluted you," she said under her breath to Elena. "I have never even seen one in person before tonight." Elena peeled off her gloves, the latex snapping as it left her wrists. "Titles are loud," she said. "Work is quieter. Go check on the chest wound in 4. Make sure he is not drowning on us while we are distracted." The nurse flushed, jolted out of her daze, and hurried off. Dr. Alvarez stayed where he was. "Ghost Hawk 6, he repeated, tasting the name like something foreign. Elena tossed the used gloves into a bin and reached for another pair. "Old call sign," she said. "It does not change that I am still on the night shift." He looked at her for another long moment. There was no resentment in his eyes now, only reevaluation. "When this settles," he said, "I want to know exactly how much of my department has been running on knowledge I did not know you had." "Later," she said. "Right now, Mercer needs a CT and a plan for the next few hours." Ward nodded, approving the answer without saying it. "I will coordinate with your imaging folks," he said. "Make sure no one loses his scans on the way to a file cabinet." He started toward the nurse's station, then paused. "Ma'am," he added, looking back at her. "Command wanted me to tell you one more thing." She met his eyes. "They never scrubbed you," he said. "Paperwork says the unit dissolved in the field, but your record stayed open. Someone upstairs kept it that way. Might be useful." Her jaw tightened slightly. Useful for who she asked. "That is what the next briefing is for," he said. He walked away, already pulling out a secure phone. Elena stood in the motion of putting on fresh gloves for a heartbeat longer than necessary. The rotors above had gone quiet. The weight they had pressed on her ribs remained. In Trauma 2, Cole shifted, trying to see past the curtain. Elena stepped back into the bay. "More visitors," he said. "Different kind," she answered. He studied her face. "They saluted you, did they not?" he asked. "They brought orders," she said, "and a clock." He smiled, a hard, tired expression that still held something like satisfaction. "Feels strange when the universe remembers you exist," he said. She adjusted the drip rate on his IV. "Keep your focus shorter than that," she said. "Next 10 minutes. Next breath. That is enough for now." He let his head sink into the pillow. Outside the ER adapted to its new shape with dark uniforms at the doors and a silent gravity around Trauma 2. Inside, monitors beeped, air flowed through vents, and in the small space between panic and exhaustion, a different chain of command settled into place. Night settled harder against the windows as the rush of new arrivals eased. The first wave from the latest shooting had been triaged, scanned, sutured, or sent upstairs. The corridor outside Trauma 2 was no longer a river. It had become a stream, then a trickle. The monitors still beeped, but they did it more slowly now. The overhead pages came farther apart. Someone dimmed the lights in the central hall by a fraction. The harsh white softened into a tired gray. In Trauma 2, the curtain was mostly closed. A thin slice of light from the hallway cut across the floor and up the side of Cole's bed. Dust floated in it, turning lazy circles. He lay half propped up, one hand resting near the line in his arm, the other over the blanket at his abdomen. The dressing on his shoulder was clean. The tape held. His skin still looked too pale against the white sheet, but the gray tint at his lips had gone. Elena sat on the same stool as before, chart pulled up on the tablet in her lap. Her pen moved in short strokes as she translated the last 2 hours into hospital language. Deep laceration, right shoulder. 2 glancing bullet wounds to left flank. Field-level debridement and initial closure. Patient exhibited acute stress reaction and combat-related panic. The words felt smaller than what had actually happened in the room. "You write like that all the time?" Cole asked. She did not look up. "Like what she said." "Like you are talking about someone else," he said. "Someone you did not have your hands inside of 10 minutes ago." "That is what the record needs," she said. "Facts, not my opinion of them." He watched her for a moment. "You always talk in neat boxes?" he asked. "Or is that just when there is a clipboard?" A hint of something touched the corner of her mouth. "I talk how people need me to talk," she said. "Tonight that is with boxes." He let his head tip back against the raised part of the bed. The sound from the roof had faded some time ago. The helicopter that brought Ward in was either idling quietly or had lifted off again. The vibrations in the glass had stopped, but his body still felt them. He closed his eyes. 49-0, he said. Elena's pen stopped. She did not answer immediately. He opened his eyes again and found her looking at him. The tablet screen cast a light across her face, faintly blue like television glow. "I was not supposed to hear that from anyone ever again," he said. "Not outside a particular hill in a place whose name I try not to say out loud." Her gaze held his. "What do you think it means?" she asked. "You tell me," he said. "You said it first." A slow breath left her chest. Her shoulders rose and fell. 49 was a number on a board, she said. An estimate. Enemy combatants neutralized. We did not have time to count bodies. We barely had time to keep our own people standing. He waited. 0 was the part that mattered, she continued. Our side, no one dead, no one left behind, everyone vertical when the sun came up. He swallowed the sound audible in the quiet. The briefing called it a success, she said. We executed the plan. We held the position. We completed the objective. You sound like my after-action reports, he said. I wrote a few, she replied. He watched her hands. One still held the pen. The other rested lightly on the edge of the tablet. The fingers of that hand curled and uncurled once as if testing the grip on an invisible object. What did they not put in the report, he asked. She looked past him for a moment at a point somewhere on the wall where there was nothing but beige paint. They did not write that our evac never came, she said. They did not write that we held longer than we were supposed to because the radio went quiet and the sky stayed empty. He saw it then not through her eyes but through a picture his own experience supplied. The waiting. The way minutes stretched into hours when a bird was late. The taste of stale air in the back of a throat that had been shouting coordinates and casualty counts for too long. We had a clock, she said. We had fuel calculations, ammunition counts, estimated enemy movements. The plan had neat lines for all of that. It did not have a neat line for what happens when someone up the chain decides you are an acceptable loss. Her voice did not crack. It did not go distant. She spoke calmly like she was giving a history lesson. Only her jaw betrayed the effort muscle jumping once before settling. We did the math in the dark, she said. We rationed, redistributed, dug in. We kept each other awake. We patched the same wounds more than once because people kept reopening them every time they moved to cover someone else. We waited for rotors that never got closer than a rumor. Cole's fingers tightened on the blanket. How long, he asked. Long enough to be sure, she said. The hum of the overhead vent filled a small silence. When the bird finally did appear, she added, it was going somewhere else. Different call sign, different mission. We heard it on the radio. We watched it cross the sliver of sky we could see from that ridge. We could almost feel the wind from its blades. Then it was gone. He could hear the rotors in his own memory now, the way a body sometimes betrayed itself by stepping toward the sound, Thinking rescue before the mind caught up and remembered that not every helicopter was for you. They logged us as dissolved, she said. The unit, the name, Ghost Hawk. On paper, we did not make it home. But you did, he said. At least some of you. Her eyes shifted back to him. We made it off the ridge, she said. That part stayed true. 49-0. No one died there. That was the last time those numbers meant what they were supposed to mean. What did they mean after he asked? She looked at him for a long, steady moment. He had the sense that she was weighing something not about him but about herself. They became a joke in a back room, she said. A shorthand for what the command liked to forget, a reminder that we had done everything right and were rewarded by being erased. We would say it to each other sometimes before a drop. The code, like a charm. Not because it brought luck, because it reminded us we were the only ones who really knew. He understood then why the words had opened his lungs when nothing else had. It was not magic, it was recognition. A key turned in a lock he had not noticed until it clicked. Who else is left, he asked. She shook her head once. Not my story to tell, she said. Some scattered, some stayed, some did not get the choice we did. What choice did you get, he asked. To stop, she said. To step out of the green world, put on pale blue, and pretend I had never learned what we learned out there. He glanced at the corner of her collar where the edge of the tattoo hid. How is that going, he asked. Her mouth pulled into something that might have been a smile if there had been more light in it. Some days, she said, I almost believe it. Then a helicopter flies low or a patient comes in with eyes like yours and the pretending gets thinner. He let his eyes close as he thought of all the times he had turned the television off mid-segment or walked out of a room when someone started a story with, in the war you guys must have. I thought I was the only one who heard rotors and counted exits, he said. You are not, she said. The monitor ticked off another heartbeat. When they told me Ghost Hawk was gone, he said I thought it was just a rumor to begin with. Something the older guys used to keep us humble. A unit that did everything and never got credit. Felt like a ghost story. Ghosts are just people who did not get to finish their sentences, she said. He opened his eyes again. You finished yours, he asked. No, she said. That is why I'm still here. He studied her face. You could have gone to a bigger hospital, he said. A base, a federal facility. Somewhere that understood what you were. Here, no one asked too many questions, she said. They saw a resume with trauma experience and night shift availability. That was enough. And you were fine with that, he asked. I like the quiet, she said, and the patients no one else wanted. They make sense to me. He thought about the detoxing banker and the girl with the paper gown he had glimpsed earlier when they wheeled him past other bays. People on the edge whose stories did not fit cleanly into forms. Does it bother you, he asked, being forgotten like that? She considered. I minded being forgotten by the people who sent us, she said. I do not mind being anonymous to everyone else. It makes it easier to see what is in front of me instead of what is stamped on someone's sleeve. He listened to the measured way she said it and heard the fatigue under the control. When you said the code to me, he said slowly, what did you mean by it? In that moment, she asked. Yes, he said. Because to me it sounded like a report, like you were telling me a result from a battle I missed. For you, she said, it was a reminder of what he asked, that you are not crazy, she said. That the way your body reacts when someone grabs you in a bright room is not softness or weakness. It is training that never got told it could stand down. He turned that over. So you said it to tell me I'm not broken, he said. I said it to tell you that your mind is doing exactly what kept you alive before, she said, and that you are allowed to let it do something different here. He let out a breath that had been somewhere between his lungs and his throat for days. 49-0, he said again, more quietly. It sounded like a victory when we first heard it in stories. It was, she said, on that hill, in that night. We ran the numbers the way we were told, and they came up perfect. He looked at her, and off the hill he asked. She met his gaze without flinching. Off the hill, she said, it means something else. It means we won the fight they could count and lost the fight we thought we were part of. He frowned. What fight was that, he asked. The one where we believed the system would hold us as tightly as we held each other, she said. The words settled in the space between them as precise and gentle as the sutures in his shoulder. He lay there for a while, feeling the truth of it move through him. It fit into places that had ached without explanation. It did not fix them. It named them. Outside the bay, a cart rattled past. Someone laughed softly at a joke near the nurse's station. The world did not stop to listen. In trauma, 2 time seemed to slow. The air felt thicker but less charged. Why did you stay in? He asked after a stretch of quiet. Not the army. This. Medicine. She looked at her hands at the faint groove on her ring finger where a glove had pressed all night. I never learned how to walk away from people bleeding in front of me, she said. Changing where the walls are does not change that. He nodded. That is something he said. She checked his blood pressure again. The cuff hissed, tightened, then released. Pressure is holding, she said. You are doing what you are supposed to. He watched her set the cuff back down. You know they will not just let this go, he said. The ones who sent Kane, they will try again. Her eyes flicked to the curtain, then back to him. Probably, she said. And you are still standing between them and me, he said. Yes, she said. He studied her a moment longer. Then I guess I'm not the only one still on mission, he said. She did not answer. She picked up her pen and wrote another line in the chart instead. Morning crept into St. Michael's without fanfare. The sky outside the narrow ER windows shifted from black to a flat, washed-out blue. The lights inside looked harsher against it. The night's adrenaline wore off in layers. One by one, the extra staff went home. The special operations soldiers at the doors rotated positions, their presence settling into the background like new furniture. In the small lull between the end of the night shift and the start of day, Elena stood at the stainless steel counter by the supply room, counting vials into a tray. Her hands moved by habit. Her head felt heavy as if someone had filled it with wet cotton. Footsteps approached and stopped behind her. Elena. She recognized Dr. Alvarez's voice, even softened. She finished the row of vials before she turned. He looked different than he usually did at this hour, less put together. His lab coat was unbuttoned. His hair, usually tamed by habit, had a stubborn piece sticking up at the back. There were faint circles under his eyes that were not from lack of sleep alone. We need to talk, he said. She set the tray down. Is there a problem with Mercer's orders? She asked. No, he said quickly. His numbers look better than I expected, considering how the night started. This is not about him, not directly. He glanced toward the open doorway. The ER was quiet for the moment, but his voice still dropped. I owe you an apology, he said. She waited. For the way I have talked about you, he continued. To your face and behind your back. For every time I dismissed your input because it did not fit the picture I had of who should be in charge in that room. The fluorescent light above them hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a machine chimed to remind someone that a medication bag was empty. You have always had good hands, he said. I said that in meetings like it was a consolation prize. Last night, I watched those hands keep a man alive while I was still catching up to the fact that the situation had changed. His mouth pulled into something that was not quite a smile. I thought I had seen every kind of pressure medicine had to offer, he said. You walk in here with combat doctrine in your back pocket and remind me I have not. Elena did not shift her weight. She did not rush to wave him off. We were all working, she said. You stabilized the freeway crash victims. The chest wound in 4 would not be breathing without your tube. He shook his head. This is not about who gets credit for which. Save, he said. I have always known I was good at what I do. I did not realize how narrow my definition of that was until you stared down a captain with a stack of paperwork and refused to let him take a patient out of your bay. He took a breath. I need your help, he said. That got her attention more than the apology. With what she asked, last night could have gone much worse, he said. Not just because of the bullets, because of us. The way we froze when Mercer came in hot. The way we tripped over each other in that first minute. You did not freeze. You did not trip. You cut through the noise like you had seen it 100 times. He rubbed a hand over his face. I want to build something different here, he said. A rapid response group. A team that knows how to act in that first 90 seconds when everything is sideways. I can handle the medical part. You can handle the part the textbooks do not cover. She watched him as he laid it out, his eyes bright with fatigue and something like resolve. What would it look like, she asked. A small unit drawn from nurses' techs residents, he said. People who are willing to train on worst-case scenarios. Mass casualties, armed threats, panic states. We formalize what you already do by instinct. We drill it. We write protocols out of it. His gaze dropped for a second. And we put your name on it, he added. Not mine. Not as a favor. As an honest label for the skill it depends on. She thought of the ink over her heart, hidden by cheap cotton. Of the file somewhere in a federal building that still had a line open under Ghost Hawk 6. Of the way her body had moved in Trauma 2 before her mind had time to narrate. Why now, she asked. Because I am tired of pretending that the only knowledge that matters comes from the people with the longest list of initials after their names, he said simply. And because I do not want to be standing in a hallway again watching someone like Kane walk all over my staff because we do not know what else to do. He let his hand drop to his side. I can keep running this place the way I always have, he said. We will keep saving people. We will also keep getting lucky. I would rather be prepared than lucky. Elena looked past him for a moment. Through the open doorway, she could see a sliver of Trauma 2's curtain, the edge of a monitor, the shadow of Cole's arm. If I say yes, she said, I have a condition. He straightened, almost visibly bracing without meaning to. Of course, he said, within reason. You do not make it a hierarchy by another name, she said. It is not a special club for the people you already favor. Anyone with the right temperament and willingness to work can be trained. Nurses, techs, even the med students if they are serious. He nodded. And she added, you make it clear that rank stops at the door when the alarms go off. People listen to the person who has the best read on the situation, not the fanciest title on their badge. He thought about that, then slowly nodded again. That will ruffle some feathers, he said. The night does not care about feathers, she replied. He almost smiled. Then we will teach the day shift to live with ruffled feathers, he said. She regarded him for another moment, then extended her hand. All right, she said, we can try. He took her hand, shook it once. His grip was firm but not performative. I will put it in writing, he said. Give it a name, make it official. Names are for the board, she said. We will know who shows up when the code is called. The conversation ended not with a dramatic beat, but with a practical interruption. The overhead speaker crackled. Respiratory to base 6. Respiratory to base 6. Alvarez glanced at the nearest clock. I have rounds upstairs, he said. Welcome to your new job, Elena Cross. She watched him walk away, his shoulders already pulling back into their familiar shape. Only now there was a new axis in his stride, a slight tilt towards something he had not had 20 minutes earlier. Later that afternoon, the first version of the rapid response drills started. They did not have a training room, so they used the hallway and an empty bay. A tech volunteered to play the panicked patient. One of the interns held a script with a list of obstacles to throw in at random. Okay, Elena said to the small group of nurses and residents gathered around the bed. We will run it once without stopping. Then we will talk about what felt messy. The intern checked his paper. Scenario 1, he read. Unconscious male found in parking lot unknown cause starts seizing when moved. Go, Elena said. They moved. It was awkward at first. People grabbed for the same equipment. 2 voices gave orders at the same time. Someone forgot to clear the area before pretending to push a dose of medication. Again, Elena said when it was over. This time 1 voice at a time. Pick who speaks. Everyone else responds. On the second run, a young resident named Patel took the role of lead. He stumbled once, lost his words when the fake patient started convulsing. Breathe, Elena told him quietly. If you stop, they stop. Pick the next step only. You are not writing the whole story in your head, just the next line. He tried again. It went better. By the 3rd run, no one was tripping over the crash cart. By the 4th, the nurse assigned to Airways moved without waiting for a prompt, because she could already see what was coming. Word spread fast that something different was happening in the afternoons. A tech who had never been in a trauma bay asked if he could join the next drill. I am not a nurse, he said. I just move beds. But sometimes I am there when the crazy stuff starts. Then you should know where to stand so you do not get run over, Elena said. Come at 1600. A week later, a junior doctor from day shift showed up on his own time. I saw the notes from that freeway pileup, he said. You caught a bleed the rest of us missed. I would like to not miss it next time. They ran scenarios until sweat slicked their necks and the boredom of repetition pushed against their patience. In between, Elena talked them through small pieces of what she had done 100 times somewhere else. How do you not panic when everyone is shouting, one nurse asked. You let them shout, she said. Then you decide what needs to be loud and what can be silent. Panic is contagious. So is calm. Pick which one you want people to catch from you. They practiced little things as well as big ones. How to speak to a patient whose eyes had gone wide and far away. Do not yell their name from across the room, she said. You are another voice in a storm then. Get close enough that your voice is the only one attached to a face they can focus on. How to keep their own hands from shaking. If you think about not shaking, you will shake more, she said. Think about the task instead, where the needle needs to go, where the pressure needs to be. Your body will follow your attention. The first time a fresh trauma rolled in during a drill hour, the group snapped into position almost without thinking. When it was over, Alvarez met Elena's eyes across the bay. There was no surprise there this time, only a quiet acknowledgement. 2 weeks after the night of the ambush, the calendar on the wall said it was time for Cole to leave. He stood near the sliding doors in a pair of jeans and a plain t-shirt that pulled slightly over the bandages on his shoulder. His posture was straighter than it had been when they admitted him, though fatigue still tugged at his bones. A discharged nurse flipped through a packet of papers. Follow up with your primary within 1 week, she said. No lifting anything heavier than a gallon of milk. If you get dizzy, if the pain spikes, if you see blood, where there should not be, you come back. Yes, ma'am, he said. His eyes were on the far side of the ear. Elena was there, head bent over a chart at the foot of a bed. A young woman sat against the pillows, breathing through the remnants of a panic attack. Elena's hand rested lightly on the bed rail. Her voice carried just enough for the girl to hear and no farther. Count with me, she said. In 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The girl's shoulders hitched, then started to match the rhythm. Around them, the staff moved with a subtle new order. The same faces, the same scrubs, but when a paramedic yelled, "Trauma coming through," people did not scatter. They slid into positions they had practiced, leaving a lane open without even looking at the floor. Cole watched it all for a long moment. "You good?" the discharge nurse asked him. He nodded. "Getting there," he said. He lifted a hand in Elena's direction. She felt the movement more than saw it, turned her head and met his wave with a small one of her own. Then she went back to her patient, to her breath counts, to the quiet work of keeping chaos from tipping over. The automatic doors sighed open in front of Cole, then closed again when he did not move. He stood just inside the threshold, one hand on the strap of the bag over his shoulder. The paper packet from discharge crinkled in his back pocket. Outside, the parking lot gleamed with thin puddles, early light turning them the color of old coins. He looked back over his shoulder. Elena finished with the girl in the bed, checked the monitor once more, and gave the young woman's hand a brief squeeze before stepping away. She made a note on the chart at the foot of the bed, then turned. This time Cole did not just lift a hand, he walked toward her. Moving still cost him something. Each step tugged at his shoulder and side. The bandages pulled under the cotton of his shirt. He moved carefully, like a man who had learned the hard way that his body had limits now. He stopped a few feet in front of her. "Thought you had a ride to catch," she said. He nodded toward the doors. "He is out there," he said. "He can wait another minute." They stood close enough for him to see the faint smudge of fatigue under her eyes, the way her hair had slipped a little out of its tie as the shift stretched past its usual end. "I was not much of a patient," he said. "You were bleeding and terrified," she replied. "You were appropriate to the circumstances." He huffed out a quiet breath that might have been a laugh. "Appropriate," he said. "I like that better than difficult." "Difficult is for people who argue about pillows," she said. "You were fighting ghosts." He shifted the strap on his shoulder. "They are quieter now," he said. "Not gone, just not shouting." She studied his face for a second, the line of his jaw, the way his shoulders no longer sat quite so high. "Good," she said. "You have room for other things that way." He shifted his weight. "I wanted to say thank you while I was still standing in front of you," he said. "For the stitches, for the code, for not letting them walk me out of here in handcuffs." "You were not in handcuffs," she said. "Felt like it," he replied. He opened his hand, then closed it again. "When they came in that first time with their papers and their quiet little threats, I thought that was it," he said. "That they would roll me into a truck and I would disappear into a building with no windows. You got between them and me like it was nothing." It was not nothing, she said. It was just necessary. He looked down at her hands, bare now, no gloves. Small, steady, resting against the edge of a chart. "You could have let them take me," he said. "Said it was not your fight. You did not." Her gaze did not waver. "You are a patient in my care," she said. "That makes you my fight until you walk out of here under your own power, which you are about to do." He swallowed throat tight. "I have lost people under my command," he said. "Good people. I have watched them breathe hard and then stop. I have written letters to families and tried to make sense of why it was this one and not another. I do not know what to do with someone who refuses to give up on me that way." "You carry it," she said. "You let it be real. You do not pretend it was smaller than it was." He nodded slowly. And then he asked, "Then you live in a way that does not waste what they gave you," she said. "Every day you get to walk around is a day they do not. That is the only kind of math that matters now." He blinked once hard. "You sound like a commander," he said. "I used to sound like one in different hallways," she said. The words did not change much. He straightened, a little instinct pulling him to attention. His right hand rose to his forehead in a clean salute. "Thank you for seeing me when all I wanted to do was disappear," he said. She did not salute back. She did not need to. She let the corners of her mouth soften instead. "Go do the opposite," she said. "Let yourself be seen. Tell the truth when they ask. It will not fix everything, but it will stop the erasing." He dropped his hand, then held it out. She took it. His grip was warm and careful. For a moment, the two sets of scars and calluses aligned. "Goodbye, Sergeant Mercer," she said. "Goodbye, Ghost Hawk 6, he replied. He turned then and walked toward the doors. This time when they opened, he stepped through. The daylight met him cool on his face. The man waiting by the curb leaned against a sedan jacket, collar turned up. He straightened when he saw Cole reach to open the passenger door. "You ready?" the man asked. Cole glanced back, once saw Elena already moving toward another call light, another room. "As I will ever be," he said. The car door closed with a solid thump. The engine started. They pulled away, merging into the thin morning traffic. Inside, the ER flowed on. Hours later, when the hands on the clock slid past another shift change, Elena stood in front of her locker. The metal door was dented near the handle where someone had once kicked it in frustration years earlier. A strip of tape with her name written in black marker was peeling at one corner. She opened it. Inside on the top shelf sat a small wooden box, the grain worn smooth in places. She reached up and pulled it down. The lid creaked when she lifted it. Inside lay an old patch, edges frayed, the colors dulled by time and sun. The outline of a black bird of prey was still visible, wings spread. Next to the patch, folded in half, was a piece of paper that had not been there the last time she opened the box. She unfolded it. The handwriting was blocky, like someone used to printing letters on forms. "You pulled me out twice? Once from the hill, once from this place. I will not forget the code. C." A small horizontal line crossed the bottom of the C, like someone had started to write more and stopped. She read it twice, then folded it back along the same crease and set it beside the patch. The box closed with a soft click. The locker door shut. The latch caught. Later that night, she pushed the heavy door to the balcony open with her shoulder. The air outside was cooler than the busy warmth of the ER. It smelled faintly of rain and asphalt, of distant exhaust. The city spread out below, a scatter of lights pinned to the dark. Car headlights crawled along the highway, tiny insects tracing the same paths over and over. She leaned her elbows on the railing. The metal was cold through the thin fabric of her sleeves. For a while, there was only the hum of air conditioners and the distant rush of traffic. Then she heard it. The low, familiar thump at first, just a suggestion, then stronger. The sound of rotors cutting the air, slower than a news chopper, heavier than a tourist ride. She looked up. A Black Hawk slid into view over the edge of the building, black against a navy sky. No hospital cross on its side, no bright markings. Just the small dark insignia of the command that had sent it. It did not angle in to land. It held its altitude, gliding over the hospital at a measured pace. As it reached the space above the ER wing, it dipped its nose a fraction, a slow, deliberate nod. Not enough to be a maneuver, just enough to be seen. An honor if you knew how to read it. Wind from the rotors brushed her face, lifted a strand of her hair. The sound settled into her chest, familiar and strange at once. She placed her hand flat against her sternum over the hidden shape of the bird inked there. "I am still here," she said quietly to the belly of the aircraft, "and I am still working." The helicopter continued across the sky rotors, beating a receding rhythm until it was only a fading echo and a memory of vibration in the railing under her arms. The balcony door opened behind her. Elena. She turned. Dr. Alvarez stepped out, a folder tucked under one arm. The night air made his breath plume faintly. "The paperwork is done," he said. "Administration signed off on the Rapid Response Unit. They want to call it the Cross Triage Initiative, but I told them that was a mouthful." She raised an eyebrow. "What did you tell them to call it?" she asked. "Rapid Response Triage," he said. "Simple, honest. The list of core staff has your name at the top under lead." He held out the folder. She did not take it yet. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I'm sure we have already started," he said. "This just catches the paperwork up." He hesitated, then added, "Major Ward stopped by before he left. He asked after you. Called you Commander Cross. I'm not going to pretend I know what that means in his world. Here it means when that alarm goes off, people look to you to shape the first minute." She looked past him through the balcony door into the ER. A monitor flashed in the distance. A nurse laughed softly at something by the station. Someone pushed a mop bucket down the hall, the wheels squeaking. "Then our first minute needs to be clear," she said. "Everyone in that room needs to know the same thing." He waited. She turned back to him. "The patient is the mission," she said. "No one on the team is optional. From the person holding the door to the one holding the scalpel, every pair of hands matters." He nodded slowly. "I can work with that," he said. She took the folder, then feeling the weight of it against her palm. It was not heavy, but it pulled on more than just her hand. The balcony light buzzed overhead. The wind had already erased the rotor wash from the sky. Elena opened the door and stepped back inside. The sounds of the ER rose to meet her, familiar and immediate. She walked down the hall toward the nurse's station, the folder under her arm, the echo of the helicopter still somewhere between her ribs and her memories. Under the busiest lights in the hospital, where alarms would always find a way to ring, she took her place in the current and let it carry her forward. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.